As Anne mentioned, I'm with the National Archives of Australia. The National Archives is an Australia-wide organisation. We have offices in every state capital. Here in Melbourne, we share an office with the Public Record Office of Victoria at the Victorian Archive Centre in Shield Street in North Melbourne. The National Archives collection is made up of records created by Australian federal government agencies, and it dates largely from 1901 through Federation. However, we do have some earlier colonial administration records for such functions as were inherited or taken over by the Commonwealth Government from the colonies or subsequently states later on. We hold many records which are a great source of information for anyone carrying out their own family history, with some of the most commonly used of those records being records created by the Department of Defence and the Department of Immigration. And I'll be playing to our strengths today by mainly speaking about records created by the Department of Immigration. In keeping with the theme of this year's Family History Feast, I'll spend some time showing you a selection of photographs relating to the employment of migrants in Australia, which are drawn from the vast number of photographs in our collection, and also how to undertake a basic search for these photographs. Then we'll look at an interesting subset of migrant selection documents or records, where the migrants were sponsored by the Melbourne and Metropolitan Tramways Board. Here we have, by way of introduction, some of the photographs I was referring to. The slide in the centre shows Finnish migrants printing a Finnish language newspaper called Suomi. Now, that newspaper started publication in Melbourne in 1926, but at the time that it's shown here, it was being printed in Brisbane. On the left, we can see a self-employed migrant working as a tailor, and on the right is a photograph of one of the more than 90 British and European migrants who worked on the Apollo 11 moon mission. Although many of the photographic captions don't identify individual migrants by name, in this particular instance, a Dutch migrant, William Kempies, who was chief engineer at Honeysuckle Creek Tracking Station, is named. So these photographs are taken from a particular record series in our collection. It's identified as Series A12111. This is a series dedicated to photographs taken by the Department of Immigration between 1946 and 2006, and those photographs have been primarily taken and used for publicity purposes by the department. There are over 26,000 such photographs, and of that 26,000 or so, just over 4,500 illustrate new migrants in various varieties of employment. And you'll note here that most of the items in the series are listed on our record search catalogue, online catalogue, and a great many of them have been digitised and can be viewed on the catalogue. To commence accessing these photos and other records in our collection, you'd need to go to the National Archives website, and this is our web address, www.naa.gov.au. That will take you to our homepage, and displayed on the homepage are several different portals through which you can access various types of information contained on the home page, dedicated to particular types of users. So you'll see this is for government users or members of government agencies who are looking for archival advice with regards to their records. Various current exhibitions and events that the Archives is either hosting or involved with. There are educational resources for school children, some general information about us, and of course all the latest news. There are several ways or avenues by which you can access photo search. Now, photo search is the dedicated photographic catalogue, or photograph catalogue for the National Archives. You can access it from this page, which, yes, so if you click on Search the Collection up here, it does take you to this particular page on our website. From there, to access photo search, you'll see there are a couple of avenues up here through record search, or there is a link just down here. We'll look at the this photo search option first and what that takes you to. So this is the primary search page for the photo search catalogue. You will see there are a couple of search mechanisms up here. You can search by keywords. You can narrow the results by date range through a sort of a slide rule there. And search results will be displayed as these preview photos. By hovering a mouse over any one of these particular photos, it opens up a more comprehensive screen with descriptive information for the particular photograph. So if we click on the second picture down on the right, whoops, that was right. This one here. We can see all of the descriptive information entered over here. These are migrants employed at or arriving at the General Motors Holden factory at Fisherman's Bend, Port Melbourne. We have the additional information that about 50% of the 5,400 workers at General Motors were at that time migrants. The photograph dates from 1955. Now, just going back to the search page here, and if we click on another image, if we go to the third picture down, third from the left, down here, we've got a photograph of migrants engaged in a very different occupation. This is Fritz Duret and his wife engaged in poultry farming at their farm near Castlemaine in 1967. So if we go back and we access photo search through the record search option on the search page, you just navigate through these green tabs at the top here. So we're in the photo search, main search page. Once again, you've got a number of different options by which you can conduct a search. You can enter keywords, you can narrow that by date range, or you can allow the catalogue itself to suggest some categories by clicking on subject here, and by just entering A, we come up with several different industries. We have advertising, agriculture, archaeology, and architecture. And you can then proceed to search for photographs identified with any of those industries. Another option is to simply enter a person name. Here we've entered a migrant's name, Johan Reitenberg, as keywords for a title search. Oops. Yes. And this is the results of our search under the name Johan Reitenberg. So we've got two items here. They are both photographs from the earlier mentioned series. That's A12111. However, just one of them has been digitised and is viewable online. Whoops. I do apologise. And that's indicated by this little camera icon here. And if we click on that, it brings up the photograph of Johan, and as the caption tells us, Johan was employed as a Melbourne tram driver who was apparently planning to give up his job to become a stamp dealer. Now, Mr. Reitenberg's employment as a tram driver provides a convenient bridge to a discussion of the next type of record that I wanted to spend some time on. During the 1950s, the Melbourne and Metropolitan Tramways Board felt a demand for additional tram and bus conductors. Apparently, Melbourne's tram usage peaked at 260 million trips in 1949. And some Irish migrants were consequently sponsored by the Tramways Board to work as bus or tram conductors and conductresses in Victoria. Series B4062 is a collection of Irish migrant selection documents where you can find examples of immigration and medical documents submitted by Irish migrants sponsored by the Tramways Board, as well as other Australian employers. The assisted passage scheme carried out on behalf of the Tramways Board is just one example of post-war migration being driven by the labour requirements of particular industries. Victorian Railways were also sponsors of many post-war migrants to Australia, while the sugar industry was a major sponsor of Italian migrants to northern Queensland. So, migrant selection documents. They include those forms completed by applicants hoping to receive assistance from the Australian government to help them cover the costs of migrating to Australia. A number of assisted passage schemes came into place after World War II with the overarching purpose of boosting Australia's population, and it was believed that by encouraging European migrants, the nation could or would be both economically and from the point of view of security much stronger. The migrant selection documents in the National Archives collection are generally contained in a number of series according to year of arrival and under two primary groupings. And those groupings are British migrants on the one hand, and that covers those migrants with existing British citizenship, and European migrants, which is something of a catch-all for anyone who didn't have British citizenship and were migrating from European countries. There are also several series exclusively containing selection documents for Maltese and Irish migrants who seem to have been considered to lie somewhere between the two previous categories. Although migrants from many countries arrived through employer sponsorship under the group nominations scheme, I will continue to focus on Irish migrants by way of illustration of the types of migrant selection documentation common to all. The two Victorian series containing Irish migrant selection documents are displayed here. The series numbers are B4062 and B4063, which can be used to limit your search in our online catalogue to just this nationality of migrant selection documents, if you so wish. Series B4063 covers 1948 to 1956 and consists of 558 name-identified case records, while the other series B4062, covers 1955 to 56, so there's some overlap there, and that contains 292 case records. So in total, you've got case records for some 850 Irish migrants travelling to Victoria. The documentation that these records contain was forwarded from the Australian Embassy in Dublin for migrants intending to settle and work in Victoria. In most cases, there will be one file per individual or family group. Applicants were required to submit a completed application for assisted passage to Australia form, a completed medical examination form with an X-ray report, 2 passport-sized photographs, and 2 personal references or letters of recommendation. In most of the files, all of these documents are included. Both series also often contain some administrative records, for example, nominal rolls for passenger ships and registers of lost luggage, etc. So the first series we'll look at is B4063. This series contains migrant selection documents for individuals and family groups. As I mentioned earlier, all items in both series are searchable by name through our database record search. The family shown here are the Kingston family, who I will discuss in more detail shortly. As you'll see, migrant selection documents hold a wealth of information for the family history researcher. These records can vary in the amount of detail they provide, but generally you will be able to gather a great deal of personal information, including name, address in Ireland, and intended address in Australia, place and date of birth, marital status, nationality, a physical description, current occupation and employment history, educational background, proposed employment in Australia, and the results of medical examinations. In the case of the aforementioned Kingston family, here is the application form which has been completed by Ernest Kingston for assisted passage to Australia. From this form, we can see that the Kingston family lived at Melville House, Upper Strand in Cork, Ireland. Ernest was born in August 1894 in Cork. He's married and is rather tall for the time at 5 foot 11 inches. At the bottom of the form, Ernest lists the details of those he wished to accompany him to Australia, naturally his family members. So he's listed his wife, Louise, son, Ernest Jr., and daughter, Audrey. We're also given the dates and places of birth for each of these family members. And here we have Ernest Kingston's employment history. He served an apprenticeship with the boot department of John Atkins and Son at Dunmanway in County Cork before he joined the Army in 1918 and served overseas with the motor transport arm of the Royal Army Service Corps. After being discharged from the Army in 1920, he worked as a commercial traveller for 12 years for R.A. Miller of Dungarvan, County Waterford, before opening a grocery business on his own account. So as you can see, it's quite a detailed history of Ernest's prior employment before his arrival in Australia. Here we have another Irish migrant born in 1930. This is Michael Mullen, who started work at age 15 for, I have to be careful how I pronounce this, Corus Lompier Arian, which translates as the Irish Transport System, which is a public transport corporation in the Irish Republic. And he commenced as a junior messenger, and then in March 1950 he was promoted to bus conductor. He was sponsored by the Melbourne Tramways Board to migrate to Victoria, and naturally therefore intended to work as a bus conductor in Melbourne. He brought with him £10 of savings with which to start his new life. Now, this is I really don't know how Terry came across that particular one. Yes, Peter James Rabbit, assisted passage to Australia. So this is taken from a discrete group of records within the general migrant selection documents for those Irish migrants who came to Melbourne to work for the Tramways Board. I suspect the previous one for Michael Mullen is also from that discrete group of selection documents. These records are found in Series B4062, and this is a typical example for Peter Rabbit. Here we have, it's a medical examination form, but it's specific to those migrants who are being sponsored by the Tramways Board. So the form has been created by the Melbourne Metropolitan Tramways Board, Victoria. Report of result of medical examination of candidate for employment. Everything looks fairly normal for Peter Rabbit here. And these are the medical standards that were required by the board. I imagine vision and hearing would have a priority if you're driving a tram or bus. So, to search these records for a particular person, we can also go back to you remember I mentioned the green tabs at the top here in record search, the advanced search screen, and simply enter a name and a series number if you want to confine it to these Irish migrant selection documents. Here the name Murray has been entered together with that the series number. And this shows the result. We have two records with the name Murray, and once again one of them has been digitised. You'll note that the icon for digitised documents is slightly different to the one for digitised photos, but they both indicate that the record, be it photo or document, can be accessed through the catalogue. And here we have a migrant selection application form for Patrick Murray, born 28th of May 1935 in County Wexford. He ultimately arrived in Melbourne per the ship Orion on the 11th of September 1955. Patrick is an apprentice carpenter. He has a private income of £200 a year, of which he has been able to save up £30 to bring with him to Australia. Because this application dates from 1955, when Patrick was not yet 21, he had to present a letter from his parents giving their consent for him to travel to Australia to work for the Victorian Railways. And this is the said letter, also contained in the migrant selection documents for Patrick. Finally, we have a photograph of another somewhat later group of migrants who also came to Melbourne and found work on the tramways. This time, migrants from Vietnam. This is also taken from a collection of Immigration Department photographs, and this one dates from 1979. So I hope you've enjoyed these brief glimpses into the employment of migrants taken from the National Archives collection. If you'd like to further investigate what we have, we'd love to see you in our reading room at the Victorian Archives Centre, 99 Shield Street, North Melbourne, open Wednesday to Friday. And of course, you can access a great many and an increasing number of our records through our website at www.naa.gov.au.